traditional idea of homelessness that people would imagine would be a man, maybe in his middle years, sleeping on the street, possibly with addictions, alcohol. Well, that's actually very few people that are homeless make up that portion of the population. Women, families, youth, younger people, they're not seen, they don't sleep on the streets, they're actually hidden in other places.
This is the Holy Sepulchre in Mount Eden. One of the places of refuge, I guess. I think after attempting to source help from the police and every organisation that I could think of, even social support services, but I just didn't seem to fit a criteria. I wasn't an alcoholic. I wasn't a drug addict, I hadn't been sexually abused, so I guess you get to a point in your life where you have to source something higher.
What I've noticed over the years, that problems seem to arrive in your life when you're around the 13, 14-year-old mark. And it seems to me that whatever scarring you get in that time of your life plays a major role in your later life. Well, every person should be counted, no matter whether you live in a castle or someone's floor. If you're a human being, you should be counted.
You have to have a good definition to be able to count anything or to be able to respond to anything in terms of service provision. You have to be able to identify the issue that you're talking about. So a clear definition is quite important for that. And it allows the collection of data, it allows the ability to plan for services and to plan a response that's thorough and that everybody knows which part of homelessness they're trying to address.
I think in my experience, a lot have come from broken homes and have come from parents who aren't there or who are in the grip of addiction. There could be a multitude of other kids staying at the house, there could be extended family, it could be some siblings in SIFS care. It's really, really random.
I would always hope that we live in this sort of country where people would want to care for those who are worst off. And I think particularly if we can understand that often this is because of the way that children have been treated, that they end up at this part in their journey. So I think to understand that there must be interventions that prevent these things happening in later life.
I had a stepfather that didn't want anything to do with me. He was just there for my mother, so my mother had to look after me and I had to put up with a lot of shit from my stepfather. And it sort of ended up, you know, me not putting up with shit when I turned the age of 14. Didn't want to put up with it anymore, so stepfather said, "You're out of here," kicked me out. Well, my name's Carl Thompson, and I was out on the streets at the age of 14, and I'm 29 years old now, and I'm not out on the streets at the moment, which is good.
There is a sense in which when you trip over homeless people on the street, you immediately, everybody is actually concerned or feels about that. Whereas New Zealand, homelessness tends to be, hidden, and it involves a whole lot of things.
It can be what we call chronic homelessness or rough sleeper, where somebody doesn't literally have a roof over their head. But there is other types of homelessness for women who have left relationships and they're living in temporary housing and they are really homeless, There are people who sofa surf from one house to another, and in a sense they don't have a permanent abode.
You can define homelessness, and this is the definition we've chosen to go with our work in New Zealand, in 3 main levels, and this is Chamberlain and Mackenzie's definition in Australia. We've decided that primary homelessness, under their definition, we've decided to use that as people, rough sleepers, people who use improvised dwellings. That might include cars, garages, places that really aren't designed for living. Then secondary homelessness is really family and friends, and it's the first place people will turn to if they lose their traditional accommodation or housing. And that could be friends or families, so it might be couches, it could be spare rooms, or it might be emergency refuges, boarding houses, shelters. Anyone living in that situation would be considered secondary homeless. Then tertiary homelessness would be people living in long-term situations that really aren't secure. So boarding houses where someone's really, in England we used to call them bedsits, so it's you get a room, you get a bed, but you don't get any contract, there's no security of tenure there, you can't really make a lot of choices from that place, you haven't got a lot of ability to plan how long you might be there.
What would you do if you had absolutely no money, 1 pair of undies, you know, a bag and a sleeping bag? What are you going to do? No one's going to stop on the street and give you anything. You know, you may not look like someone people want to talk to. I think it's just that misconception. They don't always have the choices. Like, it's not like they can just say, oh yeah, I'm not going to be on the street anymore, I might just go back to that house. What house? What person is going to take them in?
I went to all extremes to try and stay at the house I was living at, but the violence just got too much. It had 4 walls, water and shelter and food, that's about it, but it wasn't a home. Often I'd look at the front door, if I went out, I'd look and it was like walking into a hellhole, you know, like a minefield. It's like, do I really want to go in there? But I guess in hindsight, the abuse, it holds you there. You have this vision of a white picket fence, you know, everything that society conjures up, and it's like, well, one day it'll get better, you know, because that's how life's supposed to be when you have a baby.
I remember talking to Jeremy Swain, who runs Thames Reach Bondway in London, which is one of the most successful charities, and he put it as bluntly as this: if you talk about choices, are you talking about a 13-year-old girl who escapes an abusive household and chooses to be on the street rather than be molested by a stepfather? Is that a choice? You know, what are you choosing between? Are you choosing to remain in that home, or are you choosing to be on the street? Now, that's an extreme example, but I think when you're talking about choices, I think maybe we should be talking about options in life. And what are the options that people have? And a lot of these people don't have a lot of options.
I actually first started staying off in these bushes next to my parents' house, yeah, and that was when I was like 14, started staying there, you know, and then realised that my parents ain't going to let me back in home. So, you know, went and done a little bit of mischief and a few of my mates, and we decided to build me a hut down over at the train tracks. The train used to wait now, I think, about 3 times at night.
What age were you when you were staying here?
14, yeah.
Was it very warm?
Yeah, well, as long as I had blankets and stuff, I was pretty much warm. But it was definitely warmer than sleeping on concrete. And because you had walls and roofs, yeah, it was all right, and they had a little fireplace in there. It was all good. It had a roof like that on that coming down here, so the rain come down here, and this one had another roof coming down that way, so the rain went down that way. Because you've been on the streets and out of the system for quite a while, it's hard for someone to give you a place. You know, you go into social welfare, you can get a bond and whatever, and then, you know, you go to Housing New Zealand, you know, you get a place, and they say, when was the last time you had a place? And it's like, 5, 6 years ago. And they go, well, where you been living? It's like on the streets, and they think, well, hang on, why has he been living on the streets? We don't want to put him in one of our houses, you know, like that. Although there is the odd person that will give you a chance. Yeah.
The problem for most people is they just see that person down the street. They never get to hear their story. They never get to understand their circumstances. They never get to interact with that person and hear the humanity of what's going on for them. And so the quickest response and the easiest response is say, oh, they could look after themselves if they really wanted to.
I think the biggest gap is that we don't have housing for our young people. We don't have a section where it's like, okay, we've got 16 to 18-year-olds who are living on the street. Where are they supposed to go? What landlord is going to rent to a 16-year-old who has been living on the street and who may or may not have a drug habit, who may or may not have any money coming in? Real uncertainty, and uncertainty of no background. You can't give referees of places they've last stayed because it might have been parents or it might have been caregivers who wasn't, you know, really, it wasn't a good environment for them. So for those kids in that age group especially, there's for bugger all.
So would you two both describe, would you describe yourselves as homeless, or have you guys got places to stay? Or?
I have places to stay, but...
usually I just get really drunk and kill me somewhere.
Like this.
So, yeah.
If you're under a certain age in New Zealand, you're not entitled to assistance. And you're quite often either taken back through the child, youth and family, back to your family, or you're found accommodation somewhere else. And this isn't always working.
Sleep, bro. My mate used to stash possum here, eh? Just under these old cans, man. This is where you come and bomb. You're allowed to bomb here, so it's legal. Yeah. That's where I used to come get wasted. Chill out in there. Yeah. I had no one to talk to, no one to help me. I wasn't even on a benefit. You know, when I got kicked out of my parents, couldn't give social welfare address, so I had no benefit. So, you know, I had to make money somehow, you know, feed myself, and that was it, you know. Through my doing crime and getting in trouble, it wasn't going out to make myself rich, it was to feed me for the next day. I was in and out of prison, come home for a couple of weeks to my parents, kicked out of home again. The only place for me is over here. I couldn't stay at my mates and that, you know, because my mates' parents knew that I just got out of Kingsley or something, so they thought I was bad. So, you know, I couldn't stay there. My parents were sick, you know, didn't want nothing to do with me, so they threw me over here. And yeah, sort of just had to look after myself and bring myself up.
Majority of the homeless people we see have been through foster care, and they have been passed from one family to the other, and they've had a life of being rejected and not accepted. There are other ones who have come onto the streets because of mental health issues, and that's been a major cause in New Zealand, with the closure of institutions and people not being cared for properly in the community.
Deinstitutionalisation is one of the most commonly noted causes of homelessness. So if you like, prisons, hospitals, child, youth and family care, you know, people transitioning out of these institutions, they need support, they need assistance to be able to get into a position of sustainable housing, and that's not always happening.
Theoretically, most of the women that come into refuge are homeless. They've had to give up their homes because of domestic violence. For a lot of them, leave all their furniture, clothing, everything in the home and come into refuge, and from there we try and rehouse them back into the community.